All right, let's dive in. We're taking a look at A Return to Love today.
Okay.
By Marianne Williamson. It's been called a guide to like personal and societal transformation.
Right.
And I think it's a good one to dig into because it really touches on a lot of stuff that people are thinking about these days.
Absolutely.
And it's a spiritual book, but it's not like overly religious or...
No, it's very accessible, I think.
Yeah, it's very accessible. So we're going to break down the core message, highlight some of the kind of key concepts that she talks about, and see if we can extract some wisdom from it. Right?
Yeah, I think one of the most powerful things about A Return to Love is that it really challenges us to rethink what we even mean by love. We tend to think of it in those sort of limited terms like romantic love or familial love. But Williamson's saying, no, it's so much bigger than that.
Yeah.
It's a force for healing, a force for transformation, both within ourselves and in the world.
It's almost like it's not just something we feel, it's something we do.
It's a verb. It's an action.
Yeah.
It's a way of being in the world. Yeah.
And she really hammers home this point that fear is the opposite of love.
Yeah. Fear is the big bad wolf in this story.
Right.
And when we operate from a place of fear, it manifests in all sorts of negative ways.
Yeah.
Anger, judgment, illness, conflict. Fear is at the root of so much suffering.
Yeah. I mean, have you ever noticed that like before a big presentation or like
absolutely.
a difficult conversation?
Oh, my stomach is in knots.
Yeah, your stomach is in knots.
It's like a physical manifestation of that fear.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah. And Williamson really connects this to the bigger picture by using this beautiful metaphor of Avalon.
Okay.
Avalon, in her telling, it's that mythical island. It represents that innocence and love that we knew as children when the world was full of wonder and possibility. And we haven't really lost that, she says. It's still within us. It's just buried under layers of fear and conditioning.
Okay, so how do we get back to that? How do we, uncover that?
She says, we can reclaim Avalon by choosing to see the world through a lens of love.
Okay.
Even in the face of challenges. Even when things are tough, we can choose to believe that the universe is friendly, that people are inherently good, and that things are working out for our highest good.
It's almost like choosing to see the world as a safe space, even when it doesn't always feel that way.
Exactly. It's about shifting our perception, our beliefs, our fundamental understanding of reality.
But she also talks about the ego, right? And that doesn't sound very safe or friendly.
Yes, the ego. Well, according to Williamson, the ego is that voice in our heads that's fueled by fear. It's constantly comparing, judging, and telling us we're not enough. It thrives on the idea that there's not enough to go around, not enough love, not enough success, not enough happiness. And that scarcity mindset leads to all sorts of problems.
Okay, so it's like that voice that says you're not as smart as her, you'll never be able to afford that, or you're not good enough.
Exactly. That's the ego whispering its lies, trying to keep us small and afraid.
Right.
But we don't have to listen to it.
So if we recognize that voice, we can start to kind of quiet it down.
The first step is awareness. Once you can identify that ego voice, you can start to detach from it.
Okay.
You can start to question its validity. Is it really true that I'm not good enough? Or is that just my fear talking?
Right, yeah.
And then Williamson suggests that we turn to a higher power, to what she calls the Holy Spirit. Now, before you get turned off by the religious language...
Yeah, it's not
about dogma or a specific religious belief system. She's talking about tapping into that inner wisdom, that voice of love and guidance that's always available to us if we just listen.
That makes sense. And she has this one quote that I really love. She says, you can place any relationship under the Holy Spirit's care and be sure that it will not result in pain.
That's a powerful promise, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So it's like if we align ourselves with love,
right,
we're not going to suffer.
If we trust in a power greater than ourselves, if we surrender to the flow of love, then we can let go of that fear of pain, that fear of heartbreak.
It's about having faith that things are working out for our highest good, even if we can't see the whole picture.
And it's about recognizing that we're not alone in this journey.
Yeah.
We have a source of guidance and support that's always with us.
Okay.
We just have to remember to tap into it.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
And that actually leads perfectly into her discussion about the role of relationships in our lives. She really emphasizes the importance of relationships as these mirrors that reflect back to us our own unhealed places.
Oh, absolutely. Relationships are the ultimate training ground for spiritual growth. They bring up all our stuff, all our insecurities, our fears, our wounds.
I've definitely experienced that. Sometimes the people closest to us can trigger us in the most unexpected ways.
But that's the beauty of it. It's through those triggers, those challenges, that we have the opportunity to heal and grow.
So we're not supposed to avoid those difficult relationships or those arguments with people. We're supposed to kind of lean into them.
We're supposed to see them as opportunities, as invitations to look within and do our own work.
Now, Williamson makes this distinction between special relationships and holy relationships.
Right, and that's a really important distinction.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So special relationships are often based on neediness and ego. It's that clinging, that grasping that comes from a place of lack. We're trying to complete ourselves through the other person.
So it's like, I need you to make me happy. I need you to fulfill me.
Exactly. And that kind of neediness can lead to all sorts of problems.
Yeah.
Jealousy, possessiveness, control issues.
And what's a holy relationship then?
A holy relationship is one that's based on love, respect, and a recognition of the inherent wholeness in both people. You're coming together from a place of abundance, not lack. You're not trying to fix each other or complete each other. You're celebrating each other's wholeness, supporting each other's growth, and allowing each other to be exactly who you are.
It's about seeing the divine spark in the other person, not just their flaws and imperfections.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all on this journey together and we're all perfectly imperfect.
So it's like a totally different way of relating to each other.
It's a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
It's a way of relating that's based on love, not fear.
And that brings up the whole topic of forgiveness, which can be really tricky.
Yeah, forgiveness is tough.
Especially when someone has really hurt us.
Absolutely.
So how does Williamson approach forgiveness? What is it and why is it so important?
Okay, so Williamson is very clear that forgiveness isn't about condoning bad behavior or letting someone off the hook. It's not about saying what they did was okay. It's about releasing ourselves from the burden of resentment and anger.
So it's like you said, it's not for them, it's for us.
It's an act of self-love, really. Because when we hold on to anger and resentment, we're the ones who suffer. It eats away at us. It poisons our hearts.
Okay.
Forgiveness is the antidote to that poison. It's about choosing inner peace over the need to be right or to punish someone else.
It's about recognizing that everyone is on their own journey, making mistakes and learning along the way.
And that includes us.
Right, yeah.
We've all messed up at some point, and we've all needed forgiveness. So when we choose to forgive others, we're essentially extending to them the same grace and compassion that we hope to receive ourselves.
I like that. It's about seeing their humanity.
Their shared human experience, their flaws, their wounds.
Even when it's hard.
Even when it's really, really hard.
Yeah, okay.
But the peace that comes with forgiveness, it's worth the effort.
So it's a practice.
It's a practice, absolutely.
It's funny because when I think about a return to love, I think about our personal lives, our relationships,
Yeah.
But she doesn't just focus on that.
No, she brings this message of love into all areas of life, including work, which I think is so important because so many of us spend so much of our time working.
Yeah, that's where we spend most of our time,
right?
Actually.
Right, exactly.
So she talks about work as a form of love. What does that even mean?
She calls it a ministry of love. And what she means by that is that work can be a way to serve others, to contribute to a greater good, to express our creativity, to make a positive impact on the world. It's not just about earning a paycheck.
I like that.
It's about making a difference. It's about aligning our work with our values.
But what if you're stuck in a job that you don't love?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to acknowledge that not everyone has the privilege of doing work they love. But even if you're not in your dream job, you can still bring an intention of love to your work. You can focus on serving your customers, supporting your colleagues, and doing your best, even in the small things. And who knows, maybe by shifting your perspective, you'll start to see opportunities for greater fulfillment within your current role. Or maybe it will inspire you to start exploring other options. But the key is to not let yourself become a victim of your circumstances. You always have a choice in how you approach your work.
So it's about finding that meaning and purpose no matter what you're doing.
Exactly. And I think that's a really empowering message.
Totally. Okay, now this might seem like a strange transition.
Yeah.
But Williamson also talks about money.
She does.
And I always find it a little bit awkward when spirituality and money get mixed together.
It can feel a little bit taboo. Yeah.
What's her perspective on that?
Well, she challenges the notion that money is inherently bad or at odds with spirituality. It's not the money itself that's the problem. It's our relationship with money that can become distorted. When we view money through a lens of fear and scarcity, it creates all sorts of problems. We hoard it, we obsess over it, we use it to try to fill the void within us. But when we approach money from a place of love and abundance, it can become a tool for good, a way to support ourselves, our loved ones, and to make a positive impact on the world.
It's about recognizing that money is a form of energy that can be used for creative purposes, for healing, for service.
And it's about trusting that the universe will provide for us,
Okay.
that we don't have to live in a state of constant fear and lack.
So she's not saying that money is evil or that we shouldn't have money. She's saying that we need to shift our mindset around it.
Exactly.
It's about abundance, not scarcity.
Abundance, generosity, and gratitude.
And she makes this really interesting connection between our mindset around abundance and our physical health.
Right. She even shares this fascinating anecdote about a study where rabbits who were held and cared for lovingly actually showed signs of improved health compared to rabbits who weren't given the same affection.
Wow. So it's like love literally has a healing power.
It does.
Okay, so we've covered love, fear, relationships, forgiveness, work, money, and healing rabbits. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of a return to love.
We have a lot more to unpack,
Yeah.
so maybe we should take a quick break and then come back and explore these themes in more depth.
Okay.
All right, we'll be right back.
Sounds great. Before the break, we were talking about all these different aspects of life, like relationships, work, money, and how Williamson kind of weaves them all together with this thread of love.
Right, like love is the answer?
Love is the answer to everything, she seems to be saying.
Yeah, okay.
But she doesn't shy away from those really big, existential questions either.
Right, yeah.
In fact, she tackles them head on.
Okay, so what kind of questions?
Oh, death, for one.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a big one.
It's a topic that a lot of us try to avoid, but it's obviously a natural part of life.
Yeah.
And Williamson offers a very different perspective than the kind of fear-based one we often encounter.
What does she say?
Well, she has this really beautiful line, "There is no death. The Son of God is free." It's like she's saying that our true essence, our soul, isn't bound by our physical form.
So it's more about a transition than an ending.
Exactly. And that ties into the concept of reincarnation, which she also touches upon in the book.
Right. It's the idea that our souls might experience multiple lifetimes, to learn and grow.
That's fascinating. It kind of makes you wonder what lessons we're all working on in this lifetime.
It does, doesn't it? It kind of puts things in perspective.
Yeah, totally.
Williamson doesn't go into, the mechanics of reincarnation or anything like that, but she presents it as a possibility.
Okay.
And I think for a lot of people, that can be a really comforting thought.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially when we're facing loss or grief.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so earlier we were talking about the ego and how it can be this sort of negative force in our lives.
Right.
And Williamson seems to suggest that surrendering to something greater than ourselves is the key to overcoming the ego's grip.
You picked up on a really crucial point there. Surrender is a big theme in A Return to Love.
Yeah.
And it can be a bit tricky to grasp.
It does. It sounds a little passive, like giving up.
We live in a culture that values control, self-reliance, independence. So the idea of surrendering can feel almost counterintuitive.
Right, yeah.
But Williamson's not talking about becoming a doormat or resigning yourself to a bad situation.
Okay.
It's not about weakness at all. In fact, it takes a lot of strength and trust to truly surrender.
So what does it look like? What does healthy surrender look like?
It's about letting go of our rigid attachment to specific outcomes.
Okay.
And trusting that there's a higher power, a divine wisdom guiding us. Think of it like navigating a new city.
Okay.
You could try to control every turn, stressing over the map. Or you could relax and trust the GPS to guide you.
Okay, so surrendering to the Holy Spirit, like Williamson talks about, is like trusting the divine GPS of the universe.
Exactly. And when we do that, we create space for peace and joy in our lives. Because when we're constantly trying to force things to go our way, it creates so much internal tension and anxiety.
Right, yeah.
Surrender allows us to relax into the present moment, even when things feel uncertain.
It's about letting go of the struggle.
Yeah.
And trusting that we're being guided, even when we can't see the whole picture.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's about faith, not necessarily in a religious sense,
Okay.
but in the sense of trusting that there's something bigger than ourselves at play.
Yeah, I like that. Now, going back to the ego for a second, Williamson offers some really interesting insights into how it operates.
Oh, yeah.
She even compares it to a crazy roommate.
I love that analogy. It's so true.
Yeah.
She says it's like having this roommate who never pays rent, but somehow manages to take over the whole apartment.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
That's the ego always demanding attention, creating drama, making a mess of things.
So if we can't get rid of this roommate, how do we manage it?
Well, Williamson doesn't advocate for trying to eliminate the ego completely.
Sure.
She suggests that the goal is to become aware of its tricks and then make a conscious choice to align ourselves with a higher power,
Okay.
with love.
So it's about recognizing when the ego is running the show.
Right.
And consciously choosing a different path.
Exactly. And it's an ongoing practice because the ego is sneaky, persistent. It's always trying to lure us back into those patterns of fear and scarcity.
It's like this constant inner battle.
In a way, it is. But the more we practice choosing love, the stronger our connection to our true selves becomes, and the quieter that ego voice gets.
So it's about strengthening that connection to love.
Yes.
Okay, so we've talked about this in terms of our own inner world. But how does this play out in our relationships with other people?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because Williamson encourages us to see the ego at play in others, not just in ourselves.
Okay.
So when someone is behaving badly, it's tempting to get caught up in their drama, to judge them, to react defensively.
Right.
But she's suggesting that we try to see through that behavior, the woundedness underneath.
So it's about recognizing that they, too, are operating from a place of fear and pain.
Exactly. It doesn't excuse their actions, but it allows us to respond with more compassion and understanding.
It's like that saying, hurt people hurt people.
Exactly. So instead of taking their behavior personally, we can choose to see it as a reflection of their own internal struggle. And in those moments, we have a choice. Do we add fuel to the fire with our own ego-driven reactions, or do we offer a spark of love and understanding?
That's a powerful way to reframe those difficult interactions.
It's not always easy, but it's a practice. And the more we practice it, the more peaceful our relationships become.
Now, speaking of difficult, relationships can be really hard.
Oh, yeah.
And there's heartbreak, there's disappointment.
Absolutely.
So how does Williamson address that?
She encourages us to allow ourselves to feel those emotions fully, to grieve what was lost, but not to get stuck in bitterness or resentment.
Right.
There's that saying, sometimes the greatest act of love is to let go. And sometimes, even when we love someone deeply, the healthiest choice is to release them, to allow them to follow their own path.
And that can be really hard.
It can be incredibly painful. But it can also be a profound act of love.
For both people.
For both ourselves and for them.
So it's about recognizing that sometimes love means letting go.
Yes.
And trusting that even those painful experiences serve a purpose in our journey.
They always do. Even the heartbreak, even the loss, they're all opportunities for growth.
Okay, so we've talked about love, fear, relationships, forgiveness, surrender. What else is there? I feel like there's so much more to this book.
Oh, there is. Williamson delves into some really juicy topics, including sexuality and body image.
Okay, that's interesting. Those aren't topics that are always discussed openly in spiritual contexts.
Right, but I think it's so important that she does.
Yeah.
Because our sexuality is a part of who we are.
Right.
It's a part of our human experience.
So how does she approach those topics?
Well, with sexuality, she challenges the idea that it's inherently shameful or sinful. She sees it as a sacred part of our being.
Okay.
A potential source of connection, pleasure, and even spiritual awakening.
That's refreshing.
It is, isn't it? Especially given all the societal messages we receive that tell us to suppress or control our sexuality.
Right. Yeah.
She talks about the impact of cultural conditioning, and the ways in which fear and shame can distort our relationship with our bodies and our desires.
She has this really great line. Our sexuality is not a problem to be solved, but a gift to be celebrated.
I love that quote. It's a beautiful reminder that our sexuality is a natural part of who we are.
Yeah.
Not something to be feared or judged.
So it's about reclaiming that sense of pleasure and connection.
Yes.
Approaching sexuality with love and respect.
Whether we're in a committed relationship or exploring solo, it's about embracing the fullness of who we are, including our sexuality, without shame or judgment.
And body image is closely tied to that as well.
Absolutely.
So how does Williamson encourage us to develop a healthier relationship with our bodies?
Well, she challenges that cultural obsession with youth and physical perfection. You know, that idea that we have to look a certain way to be worthy of love and acceptance.
Right.
She encourages us to appreciate our bodies at every stage of life,
Okay.
recognizing that true beauty comes from within.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's not about striving for some unattainable standard of physical perfection,
Right.
but about cultivating self-love and appreciation for the unique vessel that carries our spirit.
Exactly. And that means nourishing our bodies with healthy food and movement, not out of a sense of obligation or punishment,
Okay.
but out of love and respect.
So it's about treating our bodies as the temples they are,
Yes.
honoring the divine within us.
And when we approach our bodies with that kind of reverence, we naturally radiate a more authentic and magnetic beauty.
It's like that inner beauty shines through.
It does.
Now, throughout the book, Williamson emphasizes that personal transformation and global healing are interconnected.
Yes, she sees them as two sides of the same coin. She believes that as we heal our own hearts and minds, we become more capable of contributing to a more loving and peaceful world. It's like she's saying that change starts within each of us.
She has that great quote, "The world is healed, one loving thought, one act of kindness, one instance of forgiveness at a time."
It's a beautiful reminder that even seemingly small acts of love can have a ripple effect,
Yeah.
creating a collective shift toward greater compassion and understanding.
So it's about recognizing that we each have a role to play
Absolutely.
in creating a more just and loving world.
And it starts with our own choices,
Okay.
our own willingness to embrace love and forgiveness.
Both in our personal lives and in our interactions with the world around us.
Exactly. Before the break, we were talking about how personal transformation can kind of ripple outwards and impact the world around us.
Right. It's like that butterfly effect.
Exactly.
One small change can have a huge impact.
Yeah. And Williamson takes that idea even further. She talks about how our personal choices, our own willingness to embrace love and forgiveness can actually help to heal those bigger systemic issues like poverty and inequality.
It's interesting how she connects those systemic issues back to a lack of love. I remember this line, "We are not poor because the rich are rich. We are poor because we do not work with love." That's a pretty bold statement. What do you think she means by that?
I think what she's getting at is that when we operate from a place of scarcity and competition, it creates a system where some people are inevitably left behind. You know, it's not that old saying, a rising tide lifts all boats. But when we're all fighting for scraps, there's not enough to go around.
So it's not just about individual acts of charity. It's about creating a system that's based on fairness, compassion, and a belief in the inherent worth of every human being.
Exactly. It's about shifting from a mindset of every man for himself to a mindset of cooperation and shared abundance. Imagine a world where everyone had access to the resources they needed to thrive: food, shelter, healthcare, education.
That would be incredible. But it feels like such a huge, overwhelming problem. Where do we even begin to create that kind of change?
Williamson suggests that it starts with each of us. It starts with choosing love over fear in our own lives, in our interactions with others, and in the way we engage with the world around us.
So it's like that ripple effect we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
When we choose love, it creates ripples of compassion and understanding that spread outwards, influencing our families, our communities, and eventually the systems that govern our world.
And that brings us back to the core message of a return to love.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that love is not just a feeling, it's a choice, a way of being in the world.
And when we choose love, we tap into a power that can heal not only ourselves, but also the world around us.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive into a return to love. We've covered so much ground: forgiveness, surrender, the transformative power of love in our relationships, our work, our relationship with our bodies, and with money.
Yeah, it's a really rich book.
It is. It's packed with insights. What stands out to you as the most important takeaway?
You know, for me, it's the reminder that love is not a weakness. It's a profound source of strength and healing. It's the key to unlocking our full potential as individuals and as a society.
I completely agree. Williamson's words are a powerful call to action.
Yeah.
An invitation to step into a more loving and expansive way of being.
And it's a journey, not a destination.
Right.
It's something we practice every day.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one thing our listeners can do today to bring more love into their lives?
That's a great question. I would say start with yourself. What's one small act of kindness you can offer to yourself today? Maybe it's taking a few minutes to meditate, or going for a walk in nature, or simply giving yourself permission to rest and recharge. And then once you've filled your own cup, Look for opportunities to extend that love outwards. Maybe it's a smile to a stranger, a phone call to a friend, or a donation to a cause you believe in. The possibilities are endless.
That's beautiful. Remember, even the smallest gestures can make a difference. And as you go about your day, remember Williamson's words. Love is what we were born with. Fear is what we've learned. The spiritual journey is the unlearning of fear and prejudices and the acceptance of love back in our hearts. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into a return to love. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring. And remember, the journey of love is ongoing. There will be challenges and setbacks along the way, but with love as our guide, we can create a more beautiful and fulfilling world for ourselves and for generations to come.
Did you get any of that?